next up, we're excited to have my colleague from Columbia Business School, Professor Rajgopal, join us here and going to hear about the health ESG. Shiv, welcome aboard, and the floor is yours.
Hopefully that's good. So thank you, Stan, for this must be like a rapid fire keynote, like 8 minutes or 10 minutes, but I'll try. So what do I know about healthcare? Probably next to nothing, but maybe that's where it's useful probably to have an outsider perspective. So the title of my talk today is, will healthcare ever get its engine number one? And I'm sure people know what engine number one is. It's that small hedge fund that managed to pretty much cause an earthquake in the world of oil and gas by buying, I want to say 0.01% or something of Exxon stock. And it managed to get BlackRock and Vanguard to vote with it and get at least 3 directors replaced with more climate-friendly directors. So what's the connection with healthcare? I mean, when I look at healthcare, and maybe I'm naive, but I'm going to present a little, a few statistics that I'm sure all of you know about, but it troubles me as a citizen, and I wonder, where is the change agent going to come from? Where's disruption in healthcare going to come from? So the first thing that I often point out here is, and I'm happy to share the deck for people who want the data. So it's on the x-axis here we have health expenditure per capita, and on the y-axis we have life expectancy. I'm probably sure many of you have seen this. So when you compare this to the other rich countries in the world, we're an outlier. We spend way too much, $8,000 per or more per person. Next best would be Switzerland, which probably spends, I think, around 12% of its GDP on healthcare, and we spend around 18. So if you take that difference and if you were to just distribute that to every household, that would have been a massive increase in income growth for the nation. So when people complain that wages are stagnant, I often tell them, take wages, add employers' contribution to healthcare, and plot the data again, and you'll see that wages are not stagnant. A lot of the wage increase is actually sadly going to support your healthcare system. So that's one statistic that really worries me. So where does all the money go? Again, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. When I discovered this, I was not, and somewhat taken aback. The average American doctor is paid twice the OECD average. People often, my brother-in-law is a doctor. He'll often tell me, no, it's all about malpractice insurance. So I went and dug that out. Turns out that's a pretty small number. So that doesn't explain the gap. Most of the OECD has a single payer system. So half of what the insurance companies do arguably is not needed. And again, you may violently object if you work for an insurance company, but I as a consumer don't quite get the value added. There are lots of high volume, high price procedures that significantly add to costs. Again, you know this, I'm sure. This you may or may not know, the healthcare industry actually employs 5 lobbyists per legislator in Congress. 5 lobbyists per legislator. And here's some data on where on the high volume procedures, which I don't want to get into given the lack of time. People often argue, look, this is just an arrangement between the private sector and the healthcare industry. So what is the social purpose here? Where does engine one come in? Where does this whole ESG idea come in? Well, that's not quite true, as you know, because more than half of the medical spending in the US is anyway borne by the US taxpayer. So arguably that's where the social responsibility idea comes in. So at the we've already talked a little bit about engine one, so I'm not going to spend too much time. But unlike the oil and gas world, pharma is a unique challenge. The industry makes a lot of money. So why would a socially responsible activist hedge fund come in and make noise? Even engine one's pitch with oil and gas or Exxon was that, look, you guys are not allocating capital well. Incidentally, you don't worry about emissions in the climate, so we should fix that. But their primary pitch was very similar to what an Elliott or a standard hedge fund would come and argue, that, look, you're not allocating capital well, we need change of management. That's not likely to happen in healthcare. I can't imagine a world where a pharma CEO would go to the board and say, I want to cut drug prices. And obviously that means lower profits. So, maybe we'll never get an engine one in this space is my worry. And then, when I reflect on the barriers to disruption, there are so many, innovation is pretty far behind. Again, this is maybe my advantage as an outsider. When I look inside, I wonder, this is an industry that still works with fax machines, and we are beyond email in most of the rest of the world. There's very little process innovation, very little use of predictive analytics, as far as I can tell, in terms of OR delays, wait times. And again, there may be sporadic examples where this does happen, but from a systemic standpoint, I don't see a lot of improvement. The other thing that dismays me and worries me is that corporate venturing by and large seems to have failed. I mean, consider this whole Haven experiment by Morgan Stanley, Berkshire, and Amazon. And when I reflect back, I think, maybe it's this is a world that's kind of somewhat resistant to outsiders. And I appreciate Stan bringing me in. Maybe that's his whole angle of why he brings in a non-healthcare person here. Maybe there is value to talking to outsiders, and the field has become a walled garden where it's very hard to get in. And, most institutions that shut themselves off, effectively are immune from the laws of arbitrage, and both intellectual and financial arbitrage. This is potentially a worry in my mind with the healthcare space. You also, businesses are effectively run by two types of leaders, stewards and entrepreneurs. So one has to reflect what portion of the healthcare business is run by stewards rather than entrepreneurs. My wife used to work for the space, and she often found hiring developer talent very hard in medicine. So you don't get the top tier people. If you could tell them there's a big social purpose behind the field, and maybe you can get the people to actually come and at least fix some of the processes and the other things that I talk about. I can go on, and so let's kind of think about what will change issues. And I frankly don't know. It's an industry that makes a lot of money. And maybe this is the wrong time to kind of raise these issues. I mean, I understand nurse burnout and doctor burnout, dealing with the pandemic, and I'm, deeply sympathetic and horrified by some of the stories I read. But big picture, if you step back a little bit and think about this issue, where is the spark or the disruption? And Engine One is just a metaphor for this. Where is that going to come from, I wonder? The world of social responsibility is kind of taking, at least the investing world, by storm in many areas. Hasn't really touched healthcare in my view. So I'll just stop maybe and take questions, or if Stan tells me my time is up, he can boot me out. Thank you.
No, you're not getting put up, but really appreciate just the tremendous presentation. And it's a great way to kick off this kind of innovation summarization of what we're talking about in healthcare. And you're really bringing up some important issues that, again, were tackled last week at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference around the need for innovation and the need for better verification of innovation as well. And that's a big part of what you're talking about. But thank you very much, Shiv. And again, a loud round of applause from our virtual audience all over the world. Thank you.